¿Qué pasa, gente? ¿Cómo estamos aquí? Aquí estamos de vuelta por el canal y lo que tenemos en el día de hoy es un vídeo totalmente distinto a lo clásico. Hoy vamos a ver un pequeño avance que ha hecho, no sé si es un streamer oficial, Necrit, ¿vale? Vamos a suscribirnos aquí, vamos a darle like lo primero. No sé si realmente es un streamer oficial de Riot y no tengo ni idea de dónde ha sacado esta información, pero muchos de ustedes ya saben que va a salir en 2024 o en 2023, depende de cómo lo vayan llevando, un MMO que creo yo que será el nuevo World of Warcraft respecto al boom. Hará que prácticamente toda la sociedad gamer de PC juegue a este MMO. Y obviamente pues nosotros no vamos a hacer menos, nosotros nos vamos a enganchar como la abeja a la miel, básicamente. Y traemos lo que viene siendo el primer first look. Realmente no es ni gameplay, sino básicamente una charla del streamer contándonos pues avances, mapeado, el HUD, varios modelos que tienen por ahí. Y pues para ver un poquitito lo que viene siendo el mejor MMO que está por salir de Riot Games, ¿vale? Del clásico League of Legends, del clásico Maestro Yi Jungla de los cojones, pues básicamente ese. Así que como el vídeo dura 27 minutos, vamos a darle para adelante, ¿vale? Y vamos a verlo tranquilamente.
Even though, looking back, that's a fairly subjective thing to say. Everyone knew MMOs had the power to create cult following, but also everyone knew making MMOs was hard. On average, an MMO has to spend at least 6 years in the baking before it can get anywhere near being good. But that didn't stop companies from jumping onto the bandwagon anyway. And soon we could see dozens of new MMOs, all releasing in 2008. All being called the WoW killers. Spoiler alert, none of them did that. And unfortunately, we can feel the ripple effects even now. It got to a point where every time a new MMO is announced, we all think the same thing. Oh. Anyway, when you're working on an MMO, you have to respect...
Vale, no sé si están viendo los subtítulos, pero básicamente lo que dice es que siempre las compañías han subido al carro de los MMO y todas han intentado ser el WoW killer, matar al WoW, eliminarlo de la faz de la tierra, pero, mi rey, no se puede. El WoW es literalmente un hongo arraigado en nuestro ser que no van a poder quitar nunca, pero confío en el que el MMO de Riot lo haga tremendamente god.
3 pillars. Gameplay is king, social interactions matter, and the world setting is important. When Riot announced their MMO, it became clear that 2 of the pillars are being respected, and the third one is already done. When it comes to the gameplay, it is currently in the hands of Ghostcrawler, someone who's been working on WoW during its best times, and someone who got a reputation for hating boomkins and loving mages. When it comes to the social interactions, it is a dance between the developers and the players. A dev can guide players towards social interactions, or they can annihilate them, and after that, the players usually find their own fun inside the MMO. From that point on, the devs should do everything in their power to support the players having fun in their own way. And finally, when it comes to the world of an MMO, in Riot's case, it's done. And it's been finished for quite a few years now. In fact...
Uf. Ese sería el mapa del juego de Riot, ¿vale? Vamos a verlo.
It's done.
Bastante bonito. Obviamente aquí tenemos Freljord. Tenemos aquí los bosques de los Yordle. Y pues bueno, supongo que aquí la península conquistada por Noxus, puede ser. Y varias islas que, pues bueno, a saber qué carajos son.
Finished for quite a few years now. In fact, the world of Riot's MMO is in such a good state. They already have the continents, the zones, the cultures, and the races. And to a lesser degree, every zone already has its own storyline. Now, of course, unless you follow the lore of League of Legends, you wouldn't know about this. And that's why I decided to make this video. I want to show you all the zones we are going to see in the MMO and what sorts of quests we are going to do there. So, for the purpose of this video, I will assume you have no idea what League of Legends is about. You have no idea what the universe is about, but you like MMOs, your hairline is receding, and you have a crippling fear of Nintendo 64 controllers. To which I might add, why do you think I'm wearing hats? But now, without further ado, let's have a look at all the zones in Riot's MMO.
Qué bueno, A ver, hay que admitir que este pibe es muy bueno, Aquí tenemos, vale, aquí tenemos la zona. Freljord, Noxus, Demacia, Piltover y Sound en el puente entre continentes, Shurima, Ixtal, Dargon, Bilgewater, Shadow Island y Ionia, tío. ¡Wow! Está muy bien,
The world of League of Legends. Right now, the world is separated into 10 main regions. But these 10 regions don't cover all the land on the map, so there are some mini-zones in between them. And the lore already revealed that there is gonna be another continent further to the east. That definitely sounds like a future expansion to me. In fact, it would be foolish to release all of these regions at launch. You can easily turn half of these into separate expansions. And because a lot of people already know and love these regions, the hype behind these expansions would be big. With that said, I know
irían con expansiones y todo el rollo, obviamente.
Or Ionians. And now you may be cursing me for suggesting that these would be expansions. But the lore can justify giving you these nations as playable races without having their regions. I'll show you how Riot can pull this off in a bit. First, let's talk about the regions Riot's MMO has to start with. The Northern Continent. This entire continent is called Valoran. Not Valorant, Valoran. And this is where the absolute core of this world is.
Valorant.
The two main regions here are Demacia and Noxus. They are the two big rivals equivalent to the Horde and the Alliance. While I would like to say that Demacia is your classic normie human region, it's not really true. Runeterra doesn't really have a normal place. There is something cool happening in every region. And Demacia has racism. Okay, maybe not racism, because Demacia doesn't mind Yordles or Minotaurs, but they really hate mages. That's because in the past, their rivals almost annihilated half of the
Vale,
world.
también el pibe nos va a explicar un poquitito sobre el lore, bastante guapo, para situarnos un poquitito en lo que viene siendo el mundo de League of Legends, ¿vale? Obviamente quien no quiera comerse este pequeño spoiler porque luego en el juego pues lo quiera ver, le adelanto que esto ya está en el League of Legends. Si tú lees la historia de Lux, por ejemplo, ya la tenemos. Si tú lees la historia de Silas, ya la tenemos, ¿vale?
Magic. And so, Demacia was built inside a magic-absorbing forest. Therefore, Demacia is a really cool place where you can hide from magic. When it comes to the visuals of the zone, you can see a lot of lush fields, it is surrounded by mountains, but the iconic part of Demacia are the buildings. They are made of petricite, which is a combination of stone and the magic-absorbing wood.
Tío, cómo se preparó el vídeo el pana,
Were gray, all the buildings have a marble-like appearance. And yes, given what material they are using, all the buildings in Demacia also absorb magic. So should a mage visit this region, let's just say it's gonna be a painful experience. On top of this, let's not forget that Demacians can weaponize petricite. They can turn it into petricite steel, which gives you your classic anti-magic weapons, and you can sculpt petricite constructs which wake up after absorbing magic. Simply said, these guys just really don't like magic. The irony is, they've been absorbing it for years now. And this is where the story would kick in. You see, the Demacians are so afraid of magic, they founded the Mage Seeker Order. This is an order of people who hunt mages, they throw them into prison, and they torture them until their body gives up on magic. So yes, being a mage is a crime in Demacia. The thing is, people still get naturally born with magical abilities. You can't stop it from happening. So not only are there mages hiding in the royal court, right now there is a mage civil war happening in Demacia, where mages and people who don't hate mages rise up to fight for moral rights. So should we do some quests in this zone? This is gonna be the core story. Mages.
Qué guapo que nos explique la historia perfecta, increíble, O sea, nos explica cómo sería la main quest de Demacia. Vale, guapísimo, guapísimo.
Following old laws. So the main enemy NPCs might be mages and witches. But I know what you're thinking now, and don't worry. There will be plenty of boars to kill here too. There are loads of wolves here as well as stags.
Como en el clásico World of Warcraft, Necesitamos matar bichitos como en el WoW. Mata 43 jabalíes para recoger la pezuña del dedo del medio. Pues básicamente.
But further to the south, we might find some crag beasts, tiny woolly elephants, and yes, of course, in the Argent Mountains there are also dragons. Loads and loads of dragons. But that's about it for Demacia. Fun fact, the capital city of Demacia is called the Great City of Demacia. Sounds dumb, but Runeterra was not the first one to come up with this. But thankfully the other regions are a bit more creative with their names. So now, let's move away from the normie region and let's have a look at the badass region.
Noxus.
If you're planning on playing a warrior with oversized weapons and overcompensating lush hair, this is the region for you. This place actually has a long and badass history, but we really don't have the time to explain it now. So just know that originally it was built by the most badass warrior in the history of Runeterra. This motherfucker literally died on a mountain of corpses. And after he died, he was too angry to stay dead, so he just became the god of the underworld. When this guy lived, he built the Immortal Bastion,
El puto Mordekaiser.
Which is to this day the largest structure on the entirety of Runeterra. And currently, he is banished underneath the Immortal Bastion, but only a few people know about it. So, you know, that's a future raid boss. Anyway, the Immortal Bastion is the capital city of the Noxian Empire, with Noxus being one of the most brutal nations in Runeterra. It is brutal because the nation is surrounded by rocky earth. It is hard to grow plants here, so Noxians are forced into conquering surrounding land for resources to survive. That's why when you go to the map you can notice that the Noxian territory is all over the place. It's because these are all the places Noxus has already conquered. Although, when I say it like
La patria conquistadora de Noxus, literalmente el reino de César, de los romanos en la época, pues básicamente lo mismo.
you may imagine Noxus brutally raiding everything. But that's not true. They like to absorb the surrounding nations into their empire. After all, it's just more
LeBlanc.
human resources. Most of the time, they only remove the royalty and they let the leaderless people join their empire. And that's because Noxus values strength above all. And rulers tend to not be good fighters. This is what you can see in the After Victory cinematic. They kill the king because he was weak and let everyone else join them. Fun fact, conquering nations is so iconic for Noxus they have their own saying. Kill them until they are family. So when it comes to the quests in Noxus, it is most likely going to be helping the Empire expand its territory. Although this region has its own unique enemies too. Inside the Immortal Bastion there is a cult known as the Black Rose. This cult is connected to the darkest of magics. So be ready to fight Hemomancers, witches, demons, and the Grey Legion, which is an army of soldiers revived with blood magic to fight for the Empire again. And when it comes to collecting 10 bear asses, here we have the native Drakehounds and Basilisks. Now, while Noxus and Demacia are the main rivals here, both of them are also constantly repelling raids from the north. So now, let's have a look at the Freljord. Just like pretty much any region on Runeterra, Freljord...
Pónganme en los comentarios cuál es vuestra facción favorita. Yo me declaro fan de Freljord, aunque obviamente Noxus ha conquistado una pequeña parte de mi corazón, Cuidado, Cuidado con Noxus,
has a long history. But for the purpose of this video, just know that the maddening old gods known as the Watchers of the Void, who want to devour the entire reality only because it keeps waking them up, once tried to breach into reality here. They almost succeeded because they tricked the Ice Witch Lysandra into helping them. Fortunately, she realized how wrong she was, and she managed to freeze half of the kingdom with the Watchers still beneath them. So these days, the Ice Witch is the only person holding back the end of reality by keeping the Watchers frozen. So at some point in the future, you bet one of these woken up frozen Watchers is gonna be a raid boss. Now, when it comes to...
Encima nos va diciendo los raid bosses, qué guapo, loco.
This is where things get diverse. First of all, remember that the Freljord is brutally cruel. Everything is frozen and survival is everything. So the first enemy here would be the wildlife. From Rhymefangs to Yetis to Druvasks to Elnuks to Mammoths to the worst of them all, Poros. Next we are going to fight the Freljordians themselves. There are 3 main tribes here. The Avarosans, who are quite peaceful, the Winter's Claw, who are quite brutal, and the Frostguard, Lyssandra's followers who hold back the Watchers. And let me tell you, these guys have some badass armor. Among the notable tribes there are also the Ursine, which are shamans who worship the Volibear, the primal god of the wild who slowly turns his worshippers into twisted animalistic monstrosities. Speaking of which, yes, there are also the primal gods of Freljord. And finally, we need to talk about the Iceborn. When the Watchers tried to arrive here, they tainted the ice around them. This special ice is called the True Ice. And it is so dangerous, you literally die if you touch it. However, the Watchers also tainted some people, giving them the ability to touch the ice. It is still extremely painful for them to hold a true ice weapon, but at least they can survive it. These people are known as the Iceborn. But people were not the only things that were tainted. There are also ice trolls. Some of whom are also Iceborn. To be honest, these guys were made to have their own dungeon. But there are also some animals that were twisted by the Watchers. And Lysandra is even twisting some beings herself to make them serve her. So overall, Freljord is gonna have a lot of cool warriors, shamans, and horrors. So these would be the 3 regions.
Me encanta que diga horrores y pone los poros, tío, qué bueno.
Freljord
está muy guapo,
so big, it can easily make the base
Por Sterling.
of the game. Especially since there are a bunch of smaller regions in between them. There is Nockmerge, full of witches, Argent Mountains with their dragons, Tokugol with void monsters, Dalamore Plains with him, and so much more. But from here, you can cleverly set up the expansions because of how well everything is interconnected. So now, let's have a look at the continent to the east called Ionia. Ionia has a very close connection to Noxus. You can only guess why. It's because Noxians once tried to conquer it all during an event.
Ionia es digamos, el continente de los medio furros, vamos a llamarlo así. Ari, Chacha, Rakan, todos estos.
The Invasion of Ionia. This was a horrible war full of using children as soldiers because Noxians thought Ionians wouldn't fight back against children. And chemical weapons. Lots and lots of chemical weapons. Speaking of which, remember Singed from Arcane? He's the guy who chemically devastated Ionia. Eventually, Noxus failed, but they kept their small controlled territories. So the first quest here could be simply boarding a ship, sailing over, and exploring the place for the Noxian Empire. Now, when it comes to Ionia itself, the place gets mystical. Everything here is alive and connected to the spirit of nature. And I mean everything, from the animals to the people to the buildings. Everything is alive. So if you anger Mother Nature, your house can twist and strangle you in your sleep. So you can only imagine how Mother Nature fought against Noxians. Usually a river came alive to drown them. That's why all the buildings here look like they were woven from wood. It's because they were. With nature magic, people let nature build their houses. It also means that sometimes your house can just walk away. When it comes to the NPCs here...
Esto significa que tu casa... Qué bueno es el hijo de puta,
Obviously, there is gonna be a lot of nature spirits. And
Se la
a
ocurra,
lot more of simply mystical animals. From giant flying tigers to the never-ending story. But be ready to also face local Ionians, Blade Masters, Shadow Cultists, Murderers, and Ninjas. Both good, bad, and the in-between. But finally, there is also one more enemy that we could face. The furries.
Los furros, tío, lo dicho.
This race is known as the Vastaya. They are half humans and half magical animals. And yes, canonically, the species was born in exactly the way you are thinking. But to be fair, the Vastaya are quite cool and they are definitely gonna be a playable race. Just like Yordles, who also like Ionia a lot.
Oh,
Lastly, after Noxians ravaged Mother Nature, demons started occupying all the places filled with misery and doubt. So that's gonna be a nice bonus enemy. So yes, the exploration of Ionia and the raid on the Shadow Order could be a really cool first expansion. But it's definitely not Riot's only option, because we can also
Bueno, Ionia, bueno, no está mal Ionia. Pero comparado con Noxus, Freljord, un poquito meh, ¿no? Piltover, Arcane está basado aquí,
People will know about, simply because this is where Arcane took place. Piltover and Zone are two massive cities located one above the other. And they are so massive they could easily be turned into their own playable zones. They are both focusing on futuristic technology powered up by magic of the Hextech gemstones. Using this magic, they can power up anything from guns to augmented limbs to vehicles. Visually, it is simply futuristic Victorian era. And unfortunately, there wouldn't be much of enemy variety. We would likely fight the rich houses of Piltover and their deadly assassins, with the occasional thief on the streets, corrupt wardens, and the occasional rogue steam golem. But things get a bit more interesting in the undercity known as Zone. Zone is the dirty underbelly covered in thick toxic smoke. Because the majority of people are poor here, they developed a cheaper alternative to Hextech called Chemtech. This artificial green stuff can power up cheaper limb replacements, as well as highly unstable weaponry. Zone is also controlled by the Chem Barons, which are obviously gonna be the main enemy here. But on the side, we may also meet some chemical mutants, unstable constructs, as well as some mass murderers and people who
Sinhead, Mundo, Urgo,
and funnily enough, at the very bottom of Zone itself, there are the hidden ruins of an ancient city full of traps. That is obviously gonna be a cool dungeon. So yes, there is not much more that I can add here. Piltover and Zone were simply explored in Arcane. So if you like the series, you are gonna like this place.
Puede ser que solo por el morbo de la City, ¿sabes? De Arcane, tal, y Piltover, Sound, la gente nueva haya descubierto, pues, un poquito el mundo de League of Legends. Quizás decidan meterse aquí, ¿vale? Quizás una de las regiones más jugadas,
Here we can travel further south to Shurima. Shurima used to be a massive empire that ruled the world.
Shurima es lo de Asir y todo esto, ¿no?
Betrayed by his best friend, the entire empire collapsed. This region is a massive desert with the occasional city near a river. In the center of the region there is the Sun Disk, a colossal piece of star metal that has the power to reflect celestial magic. The Shurimans use this celestial magic to turn their best soldiers into the Ascended, also known as the Golden God Warriors. However, these God Warriors wouldn't make a great enemy here. That's because after the Emperor had died, the Ascended started fighting for leadership. And slowly, after learning how to use blood magic to gain the edge, they morphed their own bodies and became the Darkin. Twisted, blood-frenzied monsters that would certainly make really cool raid bosses. Besides this ancient evil, Shurima is also full of its own animals, raiders, dune scavengers, and on top of all of that, void creatures. That's because in the south, there used to be a kingdom known as Icathia that wanted to destroy the Shuriman Empire. So, they asked the Watchers for help. You can imagine how that went. The Watchers sent through some void beasts that consumed Icathia and polluted Shurima to this day. To fight back the void, Shurima does have a lot of hidden tombs around with hidden god warrior weapons. Not to mention that Shurima also has a circle of time mages who are trying to freeze the void in time. Now, as I mentioned near the beginning of the video, even if Shurima becomes an expansion, they can still easily make Shurimans a playable race because they are already connected to Noxus. As you can see, of course, Noxians already conquered part of Shurima, so some Shurimans are fighting for Noxus. Also, as a cool fact for those of you who liked Arcane, Hex Crystals are harvested in Shurima. That's why a Shuriman expansion would be a great follow-up to Piltover and Zone. And again, that's why Riot can easily turn only the northern continent into the base world. Anyway, going west from Shurima, we arrive at Mount Dargon. This place is incredibly unique. First of all, this mountain is not natural. It was literally pulled up from the ground by celestial gods. And that's because this place serves as a portal to the
No sé,
celestial
realmente
realm,
no
also
sé
known
cuál es
as
el continente
Dargon
este,
Prime. Now, because this mountain was pulled up, it also has some unique features. For example, you may find frozen lakes frozen horizontally on the mountain. And the very peak of the mountain is special too. Should a mortal reach the peak despite the brutal climate and the deadly wildlife, either they die from exhaustion, or the celestial gods deem them worthy and they become an ascended aspect.
Qué grande
There is
panfletón.
aspect of war, aspect of the sun, aspect of the moon, aspect of the twilight, aspect of the guardian, and so on. Simply said, after people reach the peak, they become some of the strongest beings on the entire planet. So of course, the mountain is full of people who worship the celestial demigods. And I speculate this is where we could get a lot of cool armor sets. There are the Solari, who are devoted to the aspect of the sun. Then there are their rivals, the Lunari, who are devoted to the aspect of the moon. But also, the tribe I assume will become a playable class, the Warriors of Rakor.
Esta no me gusta mucho, entre muchas comillas. Obviamente tiene que pertenecer al lore, pero...
Furry Vastaya. Near the bottom of the mountain, you may notice that the mountain is alive. But also there are stellar corns, a variety of mind-bending creatures, and loads of dragons. Speaking of which, remember that this place is linked to the celestial realm.
Vale,
So
que
this
está,
is
vale,
where
vale.
we may also meet the star-forging celestial dragon Aurelian Soul, as well as all sorts of other celestial beings. A lot of these would make for interesting bosses. In fact, the ascension of Mount Dargon would be a really cool raid. Next, on the other side of Shurima, there is
Ixtali.
This is a special place where people are mastering the elemental magic. They are using it for everything: fishing, smithing, walking, and this place is definitely gonna be saved for an expansion. Basically, remember when...
Es un poquito... Ixa es un poquito más pequeña de lo normal que todo lo demás, ¿no? No es tan importante en el mundo de... Bueno, obviamente no hay nada más importante que otra cosa, ¿no? Esto es un poquito feo decirlo, pero como Demacia, Noxus y Freljord no va a haber casi nada tan importante. Pero obviamente estas pequeñas regiones, lo que está explicando el pibe, es que pueden tomarse como una especie de expansión, ¿vale? Traerla... pues como en el propio World of Warcraft, ¿vale? Cuando sacábamos una expansión, pues exactamente lo mismo, ¿vale? Y eso puede atraer muchísimo a la recompra del juego, a algo, por ejemplo, sacarlo free to play, que es lo que van a hacer, y pues comprar la expansión para tenerla o algo por el estilo. También tenemos que ir pensando cómo van a monetizar el juego, porque al fin y al cabo las skins en este juego supongo que serán algo de lado, ¿no? No creo que pongan skins como en el propio League of Legends, así que quizás habrá contenido de pago respecto a regiones jugables, como una especie de expansión que no tenga un impacto tan importante en el juego, sino como jugador que tú puedas disfrutar la historia. No sé muy bien, porque hay tantas regiones que incluso me llega un poco a agobiar y a aturdir. Obviamente no creo que lo saquen todo de una. Quillana, Rengar y todo esto. Vale, ya sé que Nidalee, supongo. O Nidalee era de Noxus. Es una furra. De Ionia, perdón.
For 3,500 years, Ishtal stayed isolated, believing that the world outside of their walls was devoured by the void. But now, very recently, some mages found out that the world outside is completely fine. So now, the Ishtali mages are slowly revealing themselves. To be honest, Ishtal is the most underdeveloped region in Runeterra. We know the region has a lot of hunting Vastaya, deadly plants and some elemental dragons, but most of the region is still a mystery to us. So at least here, Riot will have the freedom to try something new. But now, we'll leave the main continent to visit the last two regions. First of all, there is Bilgewater. If you like pirate adventures...
de los piratas.
This is where
Gamplan, Graga.
inns and gambling dens. Even some local temples worshipping the god of motion, Nagake Boros. Here we are going to fight
Mi
pirates,
fortune.
sea monsters, sea witches, sea Vastaya, maybe some demons. And possibly we'll side with Sarah Fortune to fight the king of the pirates, Gangplank. But there's a lot more here. Last year, Riot released their RPG, which was set in Bilgewater. So not only can we already explore this place in detail, but it even has a monster journal. And at a quick glance, you can already see some really
Qué
cool bosses
guapo
too.
los bichos, ¿no?
However, this place is also linked to the last place I want to show you today, the Shadow Isles. See, every year the horrors of the Shadow Isles lurk out, and Bilgewater just happens to be the closest place.
Seda,
So
Cali,
every year,
Icarín.
Bilgewater is fighting the undead. Once upon a time, the Shadow Isles used to be the Blessed Isles, a rich place full of advanced magic. Long story short, there was a young asshole king who wanted to revive his dead queen, and in the process he accidentally
Diego.
released dark necromantic magic. This magic destroyed the island and made it home for undeath. In the lore, this event is called the Ruination, and because the RPG is called the Ruined King, it may not be a surprise to you that you also get to explore the Shadow Isles there. And there they have anything you can imagine. Undead horrors creeping everywhere. And should we ever venture into these islands, I have no idea whom we're going to fight. The Ruined King who caused all of this
El
is
fucking
banished
jugando Viego, papá.
elsewhere. Thresh, who siphoned his magic after he was banished, also left the Isles. And even Hecarim, the most brutal soldier of them all, is currently around Demacia. So the Shadow Isles don't currently have a main baddie. So this is where Riot could push forward some of the side characters. Now, even though these have all been the regions that are currently set up on Runeterra, Riot has already confirmed that there is a new continent further to the east. Currently, it is planned to be revealed
Un
in
nuevo
the upcoming
continente,
release.
Camaboran. Planeado para ser revelado en la próxima novela.
Novel. And so far, we know that this new continent is where the ruined King Viego is from. And this is also where he was banished at the end of his story. All we know about that place is that it is quite mystical. There are yet more dragons here, and in
Más
fact,
dragones.
Gamavor, which is the ruined king's nation, has a lot of draconic armor. So should Riot run out of places to explore, don't worry, they can always make up more. But that's all I wanted to show you today. As someone who's been following the lore of League of Legends from the very beginning, I can tell you, I'm very confident the setting of Riot's MMO is gonna be great. Their incredible writers have been preparing the world for years now. And now, it's time to harvest the fruit. If you like this video, let me know in the comments below.
Increíble, hay que aplaudir al pibe, la verdad que se ha currado un vídeo increíble, nos ha empapado como pionono de vitrín, nos ha empapado con esa información del mundo de Riot. La verdad que hay muchísimas cosas que no conocía, por no decir que el 80% del vídeo no tenía ni puta idea. Me sabían las zonas, algunos campeones y alguna historia meme, como puede ser lo de Lux con el pibe de Noxus, Demacia Karen con Katarina, ese tipo de cosas, ¿no? Pero hay muchísimas cosas como lo de Viego, como lo de Quillana, como lo de los bichos del vacío enfrentándose a Shurima. Hay muchas cosas que la verdad que me ha encantado el vídeo y la verdad una pena que no hayan sacado ningún first look del juego, pero obviamente todavía quedan años de desarrollo, seguramente quede pues mínimo un año entero, papá, de desarrollo para ver quizás algún que otro destello de lo que podría ser, vuelvo a decir, el nuevo MMO que revolucione el mundo de los MMO, ¿vale? Dicho esto, espero que a ustedes también les haya divertido, aunque madre mía, lo estoy viendo, 34 minutos que se nos fue el vídeo, una auténtica locura, pero nos hemos empapado literalmente de toda la información y de todo el continente que va a ser jugable en este juego. Háganme saber en los comentarios si tienen ganas de este videojuego, háganme saber también qué región vais a elegir en cuanto podamos jugar a este juego free to play. Muy importante, ¿vale? Y sobre todo también un poquito de morbo en los comentarios, Demacia o Noxus. ¿Cuál elegís? ¿Cuál gana? Esto es como la Horda y la Alianza en la época, ¿eh? Un besito, ahora sí nos despedimos. Quiero recordarles que estoy todos los días en twitch.tv/JackFyah. Nos vemos en esos directos diarios. Un likeazo y un comentario que lo vea. Y suscríbanse a la familia. Chao, chao.